It's interesting that you mentioned using the geography as a positive, because it's so often been used as a negative. Is that why we signed our two recent signings on hot sunny days here on the English Riviera? But obviously it's raining today, so that doesn't look too promising.
I think there's a practical side to it as well. So you look at London, where there's a high concentration of clubs, and what we're finding increasingly that young players, particularly those with families, are finding this kind of race for space, mentality, which I know that COVID was a big driver of that. But I think younger people now are changing their outlook in terms of their kind of lifestyle. And I think with the Gen Z era that they're balancing work with lifestyle in a much different way than perhaps even 10 years ago. And so what we're finding with some of these younger players, particularly those that have a partner or have young children, that actually escaping to beautiful Devon, being by the sea, rather than being inside the M25, is a lifestyle change that they actually want, and coming to a what they serve as a proper professional football environment, a big club, a strong fan base, ambitious ownership, community-led. I think this ticks increasingly a lot of boxes. So I just think some of those dynamics are changing now, and some of the more experienced players that have maybe lived up north or in other northern cities and stuff, they're now looking at an opportunity where we can have a different lifestyle down here. And I think that if you're smart about how you position the club in the area, and I myself have returned to the area after 35 years, and I keep kicking myself, why didn't I do this before? And I think because it is such an attractive environment down here, and so we've got to use that in our favour. And that's so when we're recruiting players, we try to tell the whole story. It's not unhelpful that Paul's from here. Paul's a Devon boy. And so he helps tell that story very well.
We saw that with Louis, didn't we?
Yeah.
Louis Dennis, when he came in straight away, was, I love the area, they're going to bring the family down here. But do you know what was great about him? As soon as he came in, he was like, I'm not here to just, see the end of my career. I want to get you guys promoted at least to National League or above. Very, very committed and everything else. And you might say, well, you would say that in front of a chairman, etc. But you could see it in his eyes that he was excited about the new chapter in his career. And make no bones, Bromley didn't want to get rid of him. He's done well for them. But, this is the right move for us, and it's the right move for him. And I think he'll bring that experience to the front line that we do need. We already saw last year, Matt J, when he came in, he did make a difference. Once he was fit and playing games, we saw the Matt J that we know, and I think we're going to see a great season from Matt next season.
One of the things that Louis already touched on, having played at Playmore, is the passion of the fans, and that brings us on to the Playmore Pass, the rebranding of the season ticket this year. Now, there's no bones about it. The prices have gone up, and it has provoked a mixed reaction on social media. Can I first of all ask Michael, what was the approach that you took regarding the pricing for this season?
Well, the prices have been frozen for, I think, the last 3 years, against a backdrop of compound inflation, and now we look at the football club, and in the last 3 years, there's significant wage inflation in football. So a player that might have cost you £600 a week 3 years ago will cost you £900 a week today. Energy prices are through the roof. Our energy bill here at Playmore, we've got it down a little bit, but it's running about 12 grand a month, which is significant. We've got national insurance contributions. This club probably has 100 staff on the payroll. Now, a lot of those are casual for match days and events, but that's still a lot of national insurance contributions that significant impact on that. So prices are rising, our costs are rising. The fans necessarily want us to commit significant budget to players' wages, because ultimately we want success on the pitch, as every bit as much as fans do. And so we've got to look at, and I think that, across the board for season ticket price increases, they're in and around 10%. And I think largely most people have accepted that there was a certain inevitability about that. And that's against the backdrop of a club that's gone from losing over £1 million a year. We've closed that gap, but we're still losing. So, we as a consortium would have had to have plugged a gap that's in and around the £300,000 mark this season as an operating loss. And so when Mark talks about sustainability means losses that we feel that we can cover, right? At the same time, we're trying to fire up revenue across all of the areas. And so as we thought about season tickets it's also against the backdrop that we as a club are still quite heavily reliant on match day income. Match day income means tickets, seats, tickets for the games, revenue from boots and laces, the goals nest, and what we call secondary spending on retail, etc. But we want to, one of the reasons that Mark's coming in is that we really want to fire up other commercial channels and really sweat the assets of Playmore, which we've been investing in, by the way, investing capital expenditure in improving the restaurant, the bars, boots and laces, etc., and turning this into a 365-day-a-year event business. But that, you don't do that overnight. That's going to take us a couple of years to really diminish that reliance on matchday income. So I think that if fans demand us to invest in success on the pitch, then and against the backdrop of rising costs, that's how we thought about carefully. Now, in the spirit of being open and transparent, I spent about 4 hours last night writing a series of emails to fans who had contacted Paul Bastard, our new supporter liaison officer. And they all fall into one camp, and these are families. These are children. These are parents with children that sat in Bristow's bench. And I know how they feel. I've had a season ticket in Bristow's bench for 30 years. And what they've seen is us eliminating those child concessions, which is much more than the 10% jump rate, which is the average across all season tickets around the ground. And the thinking behind that is that we look at Bristow's bench and we look at the demand for seats, and we would consider that premium seating. And there are some seats, a number of seats occupied with those junior concessions that yield the club £1.30 per game. And those numbers just don't add up. They don't add up. And so I think we dropped the ball on a couple of areas. One, I think we didn't communicate that very well. We should have been a bit more thoughtful around the impact that has on families, and which is why Paul Bastard and I spent a lot of time talking the last couple of days, and I've spent many hours writing to and talking to some of the fans that are affected from that. So there's a few things that are in train as we speak, actually. One is how we might think about a family season ticket that helps mitigate against and not overly penalise parents that bring children. Secondly, I think we're also trying to find a way that we can maybe smooth payments over a longer period for people that are investing in season tickets. So that's the thinking behind that. I make no excuses for the fact that we needed to put season tickets up as a whole. I think we underestimated the impact on a very small number of families that for a few very legitimate reasons feel that they can't move from, they want to stay in Bristow's. We'd hope that the family stand, and we've got a new matchday experience ready for families and children in the family stand next year, and part of the idea was to make Bristow's, if you like, our premium seating, and our family stand do what it says on the tin, which is a carefully curated family experience. And that's what that underlines.
The reality is we're a team together, and there's sacrifices made by the staff here. There's sacrifices made by the consortium and the board. There's sacrifices made with the team and the supporters. Everyone is having to give a little bit to try to get this club to as close to zero and no operating loss. Now, the reality of that over the seasons is whether we can do that. We don't quite know, but we'll do our best endeavours if we can get the commercial offerings off the field better. But we do. The last people that we want to hurt is supporters. We were the guys who were giving free tickets to children at schools. We're the guys who've given free tickets to the NHS. We're the guys who've given free tickets to the council. We're trying to embrace the whole community and make it fair. And that's why Michael's writing these letters, because he's trying to address anyone's concern with the increase in pricing. We will do our very, very best to do what we can for the supporters first, but we also have to be realistic about how do we get to this sustainable model, and how do we mitigate these losses. And I'm very confident that over the next couple of seasons, because of the commercial offerings we have at this football club, and there's certain other conversations we're having with sponsors and people like that things will be a lot better, and it'll be a more comfortable journey in the future. But in effect, I sound like a little bit like Keir Starmer here, or some type of politician, but we all have to give a little bit to get where we are, and we appreciate the fact the supporters have been through us through thick and thin, but we also appreciate the supporters want a side that hopefully in the future can have success, and to do that we need to build that foundation and that groundwork. And it's a horrible situation to be in, because how can you on one hand thank the supporters for all that they've done for us when you go away and when you're at home, and the atmosphere they create and the support they've given us, not just on match day, but during the week and after games, etc. But then on one hand, you're almost penalising them by putting up the season tickets. So I think probably Michael's right in terms of the communication maybe could have been improved with that, but we have been very good at communicating these things in the future, in the past, about players, the club and everything. I don't think we hide anything from them. It's their club, and we're trying to do the very best to make sure this club can, one, be successful in the future, but has firm foundations.
If you're being a totally transparent club, as we are now trying to be, as much as possible, obviously, I guess you have to take the feedback, whether it's positive and negative. And the positive that we've got out of this is that we have a new SLO now in Paul Bastard, who has been liaising with you mentioned there, Michael, and has actually helped us. So it's great that we have actually got that direct contact with supporters. It's not a closed shop anymore.
Yeah, and I think just going and this issue is really flushed it out, isn't it? And look, sometimes you've got to make decisions that's not going to be popular with everyone, and you've got to develop a thick skin, and you've got to hopefully engender enough trust with particularly our supporter base that they trust that we're making decisions for the right reasons. They might not like it. Who likes to pay more for the same product, in any walk of life? But I think the worst thing you can do is, or the worst place to be is where fans don't feel that they're listened to, or that we don't care. That could not be further from the truth. I think we were a bit clumsy with that Bristow's children's concession stuff. And hands up, we're not going to get everything right. We're on a learning curve as well. And we didn't think that through well enough, and shame on us for doing that. But we're going to put that right. And while we might not be able to reverse a lot of decisions we've made, we can at least explain where we're coming from. And I think context is really important. And I want, the appointment of Paul is really important to us, because fans should be able to go to him, and Paul will listen to them, and he'll bring concerns to us. And so that relationship's already working really well from my perspective. But fans got to feel like they're listened to, and that they'll trust that you're, and all of the legitimate concerns people have raised have really factored into our thinking about how we're going to mitigate against some of the impact that particularly the season ticket price rise is having on them. And any good organisation, any good business needs to be able to listen and understand their customers and respond accordingly. But also we have to do what's right in the wider interest and the best interest of the club as well. So it's a tricky balance and a delicate balance to strike, but we're trying really hard to do that.
Mark, I wonder if you could just address one slight misunderstanding, I think it is, regarding the Playmore Pass rebrand. A few supporters who have acknowledged the fact that you're now able to watch all the men's games, or first team games, league games at Playmore, and support about half of the women's league games as well. They feel that they are now, the price rise is because we're hosting the women's games as well as men, but that's not true. It's about being one club and having access to the same, but that hasn't played a part in the decision for the prices.
No, absolutely not. We've said from day one that we want the women to be part of the football club. We were absolutely delighted when the trust appointed Danny onto the board. And, the women's team is very important for this inclusiveness and this community spirit that we're trying to create at this football club. And it's my goal next season. In fact, we were talking about this on Saturday at the Air Show, me and Michael, that I actually have been working on a lot of sponsorship and we've been working on a lot of the players and, bringing enthusiasm to the club. But next year I want to do more with the trust and I want to do more with the women's team. And I want to work with Rob Howes to get the women's team, get as much support behind them and do everything possible on match day to see what we can do to help them. And I say to people, let's support the women's team, and that's what we're trying to do with the Playmore Pass. Whether we do double headers, how we get through that, or whether we find certain game times that we can do it. Obviously, last season it was our first season, so we're listening to the groundsman about when we can play games, etc. We might be a little bit more pushy about how we use the ground next season in terms of supporting the teams and games that are on. But no, absolutely not. We wanted to make sure that we include the women's team, and that's not the reason for the rise in it. That's just about, concurrently running the women's team with the men's team at the same time. They're an important asset for this community. We all know how popular women's football is as well. It's absolutely incredible. You go into schools or anywhere, and let's be frank, that it's the only competition, national competition, that the England team have won football. So we're very proud of that. So we're proud of the women's football team. We're proud of having them on board, and we'll do everything possible to try to be successful with that. And I know Rob's working really hard with that.
Giving season ticket holders access to the women's game is not why we've put the prices up for season tickets. It's just trying to add some value, and also trying to help the women's team embed themselves and align themselves more closely with us. And we mentioned half the women's game because that's effectively, when we look at the whole season, and we've got two teams playing on our pitch, we're thinking about early in the season and late in the season when the ground's a bit firmer, and so we can maintain the pitch conditions to their best during those wet winter months. And so that's when we say we anticipate half of Torquay United Women's League games will be played at Playmore and the other half in other grounds that we use, just so we can keep the pitch in playable conditions for the National League South.
And the women themselves had a very similar season to the men.
Oh my God!
Missed out on promotion by the narrowest of margins. I know that you were here for the league game just against Pucklechurch, just a few hours after your Strictly shenanigans, should we call it? And, how much did you enjoy that? I have got to mention that, Michael.
Well, didn't win that either, so it's been a.
I voted enough times for him. We were up against it a little bit with Robbie and Barry and all that kind of aspect, weren't we?
Yeah, I had a rubbish 7 days really. That we lost to Boreham Wood on Saturday. The next Saturday was Strictly, didn't win that, and we lost out by a point in the women's league as well. But no, Strictly was a bit of fun. It was all about raising money for Rowcroft, and so I'm really happy to have played
Next
bit
year
of a
we
role
can.
in that.
Next year we can do the treble.
He's going to
No,
put
I'm
him
not
up.
doing that.
Put him up.
No, I'm getting pushed
He
for
is
things.
definitely doing it next year.
But the women's teams go up and the men's be lovely, wouldn't it?
And look, let's see.
And I felt for them. I really felt it was horrible. You know, it's so difficult for. I mean, for us as well. I mean, and for Paul, it took 2-3 days to even be able to talk to anyone and everything. So I know what they were going through and everything. But a team together next year, we'll learn a lot. Both the men's and the women. So fingers crossed.
Michael, a few moments ago, you mentioned about improving the matchday experience for families at Playmore. If I can just bring us back to that one, what plans are there to revive or expand any support or engagement activities, open training sessions, fans forums, meet the players days? We've obviously seen some of the activities that took place outside Boots and Laces leading up to the final games of the season, and they were really well received. What plans have we got for
Yeah, so that's in train at the moment, but I hope by the time we start next season that we can have a regular fan zone, and we put one together very short notice. It's a little bit cobbled together, if I'm honest, before the Boreham Wood game, but I think it gave people a flavour of what we could do with that space. And I think we'd like to see that continue next year. And those discussions are going quite well with the council. So the Supporters Trust and our Community Sports Trust are going to take the lead on that. So I think we can see that. We plan to do a pre-season fans forum. So where we will, and Mark Thomas will be very much involved with that. Because like we did last year, we want to set out our vision, our plan, our budget, so fans are in the loop as we plan. We'll continue. So the fans forums are really important to us, and it's also a forum where we can listen to fans' thoughts. And then we've got a family stand experience, which again is being worked on. I don't want to steal the thunder of that, but there's a group here that's working on rolling that out, and that will be announced during the summer.
Mark, I know in the past that you've been very passionate talking about, in particular, that green area outside Boots and Laces between there and the swimming pool, and maximising that potential.
Yep.
You've already done, as a consortium, a lot around improving the facilities here at Playmore, making it more than just what's happening out on the pitch. Are there any further plans to improve the stadium, training ground or club infrastructure in the short to medium term?
I think, as we said about the commercial offerings at Boots and the Cove, we're going to do more and put more capex into that to make sure we can do things that we've done in the past, like the tribute bands, maybe to do some other type of events. I know we've got a drag queen event coming up soon. We're going to do more. We've got a really big event tomorrow, and that event could catalyse other events at the club as well. The council, like Michael said, have been extremely helpful with that fan zone from when we first spoken to them. So I think if we can continue to do that at home games, perhaps even maybe try some in the midweek games, that will go very well, and that will obviously get bigger and bigger. Stadium wise, and in terms of where we are, I think we need to see where we are at the end of this season in terms of like the academy and things like that, because I still feel that we can't do a lot until we get match funding when we go in the Football League. But what are we going to do to try and initiate and get these younger players in? And I think some of those areas are to do with the community trust and working on all those football teams at the low end levels. I'm getting texts all the time from people saying, I love what's going on in the club, I play for this side, play for Saints or someone like that, but I want to play for Torquay United, under 8s, under 9s, under 11s. How can we initiate that? How can we filter to get those players through? And that's something that we've got to look at very deeply in the football club, because part of that sustainable model is being able to have players that in the potential we can sell in the future. So stadium facilities, training facilities are something that we've got to look at. Obviously, we've got a very close partnership with the college at the moment, and they're working very well with us in terms of supporting that mechanism with the academy and things like that. So we won't stand still, and I think these are the areas that Mark Thomas is really going to get his teeth into when he comes to the football club, because as much as anything else, I think he won't want to interfere too much with what Paul's doing with the players, apart from maybe support with certain contracts and things like that, perhaps with support about other areas of supporting rehabilitation maybe, or some of the exercising and things like that. But how can we support some of the training facilities? How can we support better partnerships? How can we filter some of these aspects through? Is there a certain night when they train where some of the players from some of the teams come through and they play, and he can just have a look at a few of them? I sent a couple of players recently. There's a guy from Buckland who was the player's player, the manager's player, the coach's player, and he's a centre back. He's 16 years old, and I sent it over to Paul and I said, we've got to look at this guy, because he's obviously, there must be something about him that's good. And I've spoken to another couple of people and they said he's very, very good. So, and obviously we're playing Buckland pre-season. So I think that those are the sort of questions, and we've got to find answers to those questions for the future. But we won't stand still. Me and Michael won't stand still, even when Mark Thomas is here. We won't interfere with the football club too much on his job, but we'll be there to support and caress and hopefully help to promote certain areas such as recruitment, academy, off-match field activities. We know about hospitality. We know how to get the best out of those areas. So we're keen to do a sportsman's evening every 2 months, for example. We had a great one last Friday. We want to continue doing that. We've got these other events like dinner nights, festive boards and things like that we want to bring into the football club. I want to do more tribute bands. I want to do speed dating. I want to do drag queen. I want to do wakes. I want to do receptions. I want to make it all part of that community club. And I think we're very close to, at the moment we're doing okay, but I can see us shooting up very, very soon. Back to those days in the 1980s and 90s where you couldn't even get a pint in Boots and Laces on a Wednesday because it was so packed out as a sports pub, etc., etc. And of course, got the Euros coming up as well, haven't we?
Just to answer a couple of your specific questions on stadiums. So, and we're over the next 4 weeks when Mark's here, we're putting the final touches to our whole budget because our financial year kicks off July 1st. So on our shopping list of capital expenditure investments, which we've mentioned before, and we've got things lined up with match funding or part funding, turning off floodlights to LEDs. Yeah. So that's one. Thanks to the Supporters Trust, we are adding more safety railings in Bristow's, so they come all the way down, which will help a lot of our less mobile fans make their way up, because it's quite steep up Bristow's bench. Ongoing right now out there is a very expensive pitch renovation. That's an annual renovation. And we're also going to add a land drain there that drains in front of the family stand a bit better, and that will help. Because our key thing around that is that we have to avoid postponements at all costs, because it's ruinous financially if we have to call off a game within, on the same day. And there are, and Julian was very pleased to know that he's going to get his grow lights, because that's being funded by the Supporters Trust as well. So, and of course, and
they're still painting up, aren't they?
They are. So they're painting out there right now. And the other quite big thing that's happened more recently is the launch of the lottery. And so currently that is worth about £3,000 a month to the club net after prize money's being paid out. So I think the jackpot every month now is, I don't know, is it close to £1,800, something like that?
Yeah, it was last time.
So the more people that subscribe for a tenner a month, the jackpot goes up. That money comes straight into the club, and the trust will then take a sounding board of where fans want that money to be spent. But quite a lot of those are earmarked for infrastructure projects. So if that goes straight into infrastructure projects, that means that we're then free to invest in other areas that produce more revenue. That goes back into the playing budget. So everyone, every penny that we generate at this football club for the foreseeable future, probably always, goes straight back into the football club.
With the draws taking place on the 14th of every month, there's still plenty of time to get involved with the 1899 Club June lotto draw. Do appreciate all the updates that you've given us today, particularly regarding the grow lights. I think they've been such a topic. I think they have their own social media account these days. But if I can just finish with one more question to you both. Obviously, on the back of your first season as part of the Bring Consortium here at Torquay United, can I ask you, What would you consider to be a successful 2025-26 season, both on and off the pitch, bearing in mind what was achieved last year?
I want us to get promoted, and that's the fan in me talking about that. But I think overall, I want us to achieve our budget, which we'll set in June. I would like to see the youth development side of the club really start to bear fruit. That's a slow burn at the moment, and I think there'll be increased focus on that because we'd like to see more young talent coming through that system. So for me, one of the key goals this year, if we sat here in a year's time, is I'd like to see at least one or two players coming through our youth system that are close to or on the brink of coming into our first team for the following season. That's a key goal. For me, I hope that we look back in 12 months and feel that our fan base and our community and our sponsors will say that we're doing all the right things and they feel included and that they're getting, they feel that the football club is continuing to progress. So I think that progression is what we're looking for this year, is continue to move forward. And that's what it feels like for me. That's what good looks like next season.
Happy club, and that's what we've got now, a very happy club. I think if we are to meet our objectives, which for me has to be promotion, then there are some key elements of that. And that is that the commercial offerings of this football club have to substantially improve. If we do that, then we can give Paul more money, which means hopefully we can get more players. I'm so confident about his coaching that he tends to pick the right players. So therefore that will breed success on the pitch. But I think fundamentally the most important thing with my job at the moment is to get as much sponsorship into this football club that we can, and to get as much non-match day revenue into this football club as well, because I think that is the common denominator between a happy club, engagement and success on the pitch. So I think those things are the most important. To continue what we're doing, do it better, get more out there. We've had tremendous support from the sponsors this year. You know, a lot of them have taken a bit of a punt on Torquay United. I think they've enjoyed the year, but I think it's now time to really start to get the club moving on non-match day revenue. I think we've set the seeds, and I think that will be the catalyst for other aspects that we want through success. I believe 100% in this football club. I believe that we have a great coach, and I believe if we can just give him more money, then he can deliver. Unfortunately, on this sustainable model as it stands at the moment, we have to be practical about what we're trying to achieve. So we're doing a little bit of this at the moment, but let's hope we can do more on the non-match day, the commercial offerings, and then let's see where we are at Christmas, and let's see where we can go. But the most important thing that I've learnt this year, and the most important thing I've learnt about the staff, the supporters, the trust, sponsors and everything else is we're happy. We're a happy family, and that's long may it continue.
Dare I ask where you hope the club will be in 3 to 5 years' time?
3 to 5 years' time, I think if all those aspects come off, then I think there's no reason why we won't be a Football League club. But we've also said about the competition that is there through all the leagues, and you know it's hard because I think also fans have seen the Wrexham effect, and they've sort of seen where they've fallen and where they've come back. But I don't think people have quite understood the amount of money that's been put into that football club to get where it is. I saw some stats the other day that every league that they've been in, they've spent twice as much as their nearest rival to get where they are. But they've managed it reasonably well by doing that, because obviously the asset, the football club, is worth far more than what it was. But that type of process and strategy, I don't think, obviously, is something that we can do here at Torquay. So we need to make these steps. I think if we do all that, then I've already seen the support that we've had from sponsors and the supporters to believe that we can deliver on that. And to be honest with you, I can mitigate all the arguments that everyone might have about success and putting pressure on people. But wouldn't it be wrong for me as a co-chairman to not be wanting that? I think it would be. So I might stand out there and people might be critical that I'm putting pressure on people, but that is my job. My job is to make sure this club delivers, and I think that it can with the people that we've got around here.
I'd agree. I completely concur with that. I think it's tough for Paul, right? So we Paul, pound for pound, I think Paul's one of the best coaches around, and Paul has to work within the financial constraints that we give him. We want what he wants, so we're completely aligned on that. So the responsibility for us, which is why Mark Thomas is walking in this place on Thursday, is that we have to drive revenue so we can grow the business of Torquay United outside of match days, and so we can invest more, because we're in a very competitive environment. You know, you think that National League South was tough and close this year. I think it's going to be even tougher next year. Even tougher. And as you said, as Mark said earlier, there's plenty of teams that are chucking lots and lots of money at trying to scrap their way out of National League South, which is quickly becoming one of the toughest leagues to get out of these days. So we're up against it, but we're on a journey, and we are making progress, and we'll be laser focused on making sure that journey continues and that we are set up for success. And we all want the same thing. We all want the same thing. And so we've got to band together and work together. And I think that we've got all the ingredients here to make us successful and to get where Mark and I both want this club to be in 5 years, which is in the Football League. Fans deserve it.
It promises to be a very interesting few months and years ahead. So thank you very much for the time being, for joining us today and for going through all of those different topics in and around the club, and looking forward to speaking to you again very, very soon. But to Mark, to Michael, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Dom, and thank you for your support this year as well. Thank you.
Cheers.